The day of my sister's wedding arrived with an unexpected heat, one that had nothing to do with the summer sun blazing outside. As I stood in the bathroom, smoothing down my dress, I could hear my husband, Jake, chatting away with the guests. My heart raced, not from excitement for the ceremony, but from a deep-seated anxiety that crawled under my skin. I needed a moment to breathe, to collect myself. "Just a quick drink to take the edge off," I muttered to myself, splashing cold water on my face. As I turned to leave, I bumped into Derek, my sister's boyfriend, who was leaning against the doorframe. "Hey there," he said with a grin, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "You okay? You look a bit frazzled." I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Just wedding jitters, I guess. This day is all about my sister, but it's a little overwhelming. Want to escape for a minute? I could use a break too." His suggestion surprised me, but there was something about his tone that sent a thrill through me. "Why not?" I replied, my heart racing as if it already knew what was coming. As we stepped closer together, I felt an undeniable pull, a tension crackling in the air between us. Was this just harmless flirtation, or something far more dangerous? I couldn't shake the feeling that fate was nudging us toward an unexpected encounter. I stood by the large windows, watching my sister laugh and twirl in her wedding dress. The sun streamed in, casting a warm glow over everything, but I felt a chill running down my spine. My husband, Jake, was mingling with the guests, his laughter echoing through the room. He looked so happy, and yet, I felt an unexpected heaviness in my chest. I couldn't shake off the nerves. They buzzed around me like a swarm of bees. "Are you all right?" A voice suddenly broke through my thoughts. I turned to see Derek, my sister's boyfriend, leaning against the doorframe of the bathroom. He looked surprisingly dashing in his fitted suit, a slight smirk playing on his lips. "Yeah, just a bit overwhelmed," I admitted, trying to smile. I was caught off guard by how handsome he looked. "Want to grab a quick drink? I think we could both use one," he suggested, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I hesitated. My mind raced, recalling Jake's easy laughter and the promises we had made to each other. But the tension in my chest urged me to agree. Sure, why not? As we stepped into the bathroom, I felt a rush of adrenaline. The air was thick with an unspoken energy. We stood side by side, the silence stretching between us. I could hear the sounds of the wedding continuing outside, but in that moment, it felt like we were in our own little world. "Your sister looks stunning, doesn't she?" Derek said, breaking the silence. "Absolutely," I replied, forcing my mind to focus on something safe. But I could feel the heat radiating from him, and it made me acutely aware of how close we were standing. Our eyes met, and it was like a bolt of electricity shot through the room. I felt my heart race, and I couldn't help but wonder if he felt it too. The chemistry was undeniable, a magnetic pull that seemed to draw us closer. "Do you ever feel like we're just pretending?" he asked, his voice low and almost intimate. I swallowed hard, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. "What do you mean?" "Like, life is just a series of expectations. We're supposed to act a certain way. But what if we want something different?" he mused, leaning slightly closer. I could sense the tension building between us, the air thick with unspoken words. "I guess I've thought about it," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. He studied my face, and I felt my breath hitch. "I mean, look at us. Here we are, at a wedding, and yet..." He trailed off, leaving the sentence hanging in the air. I could feel the weight of his gaze, and it made my skin tingle. "What if this is just attraction?" I asked, needing to voice the doubt that gnawed at me. Derek chuckled softly, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. Or something much more dangerous. Just then, he reached out, his hand brushing against my arm as he laughed at a shared joke from outside. The touch sent shockwaves through me, igniting something deep within. I should have pulled away, but instead I found myself leaning into him, challenging the very rules I had always followed. "You shouldn't do that," I warned, my heartbeat loud in my ears. "Maybe I want to," he replied, his voice a whisper that sent a thrill through me. In that moment, I knew we were standing on the edge of something we couldn't take back. The world outside faded away as we gravitated toward each other, our breaths mingling in the small space. I could feel the heat radiating off him, and my mind raced with thoughts of what this could mean. "Do you think we should—" I started, but the words got caught in my throat. He stepped even closer, his presence enveloping me like a warm blanket. "What's the worst that could happen?" His words were playful, but the intensity in his gaze was anything but. I knew I should have resisted, that I should have turned away and walked back to Jake. But the thrill of the unknown was intoxicating. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years, and I wanted to chase that feeling. "Maybe just a kiss," I suggested, my heart pounding as I took a breath. Derek's smile widened, and his eyes sparkled with mischief. "Just a kiss, huh?" Before I could change my mind, he leaned in, and our lips met in a soft, tentative brush. The world around us vanished completely. It felt electric, as if everything I had ever known was suddenly upended. I was lost in the moment, the taste of him igniting something primal within me. I could hear laughter from the party outside, but all I could focus on was the way his hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer as our kiss deepened. For that fleeting moment, I was alive and free, and every doubt faded into the background. I knew it was wrong, that Jake was just outside, oblivious to the storm brewing in this small bathroom. But the thrill of danger only made it more exciting. As we finally pulled apart, breathless and wide-eyed, I felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. "What did we just do?" I whispered, the weight of reality crashing back in. Derek smirked, his eyes alight with mischief. "I think we just opened a door we can't close." And in that instant, I knew I was standing on the precipice of something I could never take back. I stood in the crowded hall, the scent of fresh flowers mingling with the laughter of guests celebrating my sister's wedding. Jake, my husband, was off chatting with friends, his smile bright and carefree. I felt a knot of nerves tighten in my stomach as I watched him. It was supposed to be a joyous day, but I felt a strange tension surrounding me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I need a drink," I muttered under my breath, seeking a quick escape. I slipped away from the throng of people, my heels clicking against the polished floor as I made my way to the restroom. The cool air hit me immediately, offering a brief respite from the warmth of the celebration. As I entered the bathroom, I was surprised to find Derek, my sister's boyfriend, leaning against the sink, a playful grin on his face. "Fancy meeting you here," he joked, his tone light. "Just trying to escape the chaos," I replied, forcing a smile even though my heart raced at seeing him. There was something about Derek that always pulled me in, an energy that felt electric between us. He chuckled softly, moving closer. "How's the bride? I bet she's a handful today." Unbelievably happy, as she should be. But I don't know. I sighed, running a hand through my hair, just feeling a bit out of place. Derek's eyes softened. "You're not out of place. You belong here, just like everyone else. You look stunning, by the way." His compliment sent a rush of warmth through me, and I felt my cheeks flush. "Thanks, but I'm just the sister of the bride. The spotlight is definitely on her," I said, glancing at the door, half expecting Jake to walk in any moment. "Still, you deserve to enjoy this day too," he replied, his voice dropping to a more serious tone. "Want to grab a quick drink? It might help take the edge off." I hesitated, glancing at the door again, my heart pounding. I shouldn't. Just a quick one, right here. No one will know." His smile was infectious, and I found myself considering it. The heat of the moment felt intoxicating, and I was drawn to him in a way I couldn't ignore. "Okay, just a quick one." I finally relented, my voice barely a whisper. We moved closer to the sink, and Derek reached for the little bottle of hand soap, pouring a small amount into his palm. "Here, let's pretend this is a fancy cocktail," he said with a playful grin, lathering his hands. I laughed, the sound breaking the tension that had settled over me. As we both washed our hands, I felt him brush against my arm, a casual touch that sent shivers down my spine. "You know," he said, his tone turning more serious, "you shouldn't feel like you're in the shadows today. You're incredible." I turned to look at him, surprised by the intensity in his gaze. "Derek, Before I could finish my sentence, he reached out and touched my arm, a light, surprising gesture that made my heart race even faster. "I'm just saying what everyone thinks. You're beautiful, smart, and you light up a room." His words felt like a spark igniting something deep inside me. I knew it was wrong. I was married, standing in a bathroom with my sister's boyfriend. But in that moment, all I could feel was the heat of his palm against my skin, the thrill of his attention. My breath hitched, and I could see the way he watched me, his eyes dark with something I dared not name. "Derek, we shouldn't," I murmured. But there was a part of me that wanted to stay in that moment, to lean into the tension that hung between us. I could feel the pull, like gravity, drawing me closer to him. "Why not?" he asked, his voice low and smooth. "It's just a moment between two people who understand each other." I glanced at the door again, a part of me screaming to leave, to walk away from the temptation. But another part, the part that felt stifled and misunderstood, yearned to give in. "I don't know," I breathed, torn between loyalty and longing. "You're not doing anything wrong," he reassured me, his hand still resting on my arm, the warmth radiating from him. "Just think of it as a brief escape, just for a second." I let out a shaky breath, the butterflies in my stomach fluttering wildly. "Just for a second," I echoed, feeling reckless and exhilarated. I moved just a tad closer, testing the waters, and the moment felt charged, like a storm about to break. "See? Nothing wrong with a little fun," he said softly, his gaze locked on mine. I felt a thrill as he leaned in just slightly, the boundaries of right and wrong blurring in the heat of the moment. I knew I should pull away, remind myself of Jake waiting outside. But as I looked into Derek's eyes, I felt my resolve faltering, the weight of the day's expectations lifting, if only for a brief moment. The world outside faded away, leaving just us in this small, intimate space, where the tension and the thrill of the unexpected began to feel like a dangerous promise. I'm standing in the bathroom, the air thick with anticipation, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses drifting in from the wedding party just outside. My sister's wedding day is supposed to be filled with joy, yet all I feel is a tight knot of nerves in my stomach. I glance at myself in the mirror, adjusting my hair, trying to shake off the unease as I catch sight of Jake chatting animatedly with our friends. He looks so at ease, so happy, and yet I feel so far from that. "Just a quick drink to calm my nerves," I mumbled to myself, grabbing a glass from the sink. It feels like I need something to steady me, to help me breathe. As I take a sip, I hear a knock on the door. "Hey, you in there?" It's Derek, my sister's boyfriend. I open the door slightly, surprised to see him standing there, looking as dapper as ever in his sharp suit. "Just trying to gather myself," I admit, forcing a smile. "You know how weddings can be." "Yeah, I get it." Mind if I join you for a moment? He asks, stepping inside before I can answer. Sure, why not? I say, feeling a strange flutter in my stomach. Derek has always been charming, with that easy smile and those deep, captivating eyes. He leans against the counter, and I can feel the tension in the air shift. So, how are you holding up? He asks, genuine concern etched on his face. I can't imagine how you feel, being the sister of the bride. I guess I'm just nervous about everything going perfectly, I reply, my voice a little shaky, and maybe a bit overwhelmed by all the love in the room. He chuckles softly. Love can be overwhelming, but it's also kind of beautiful, isn't it? Definitely, I say, my heart racing as our eyes lock. There's something electric between us, a current that pulls me closer. I can't help but wonder if he feels it too. Let's step away from all this for a moment, Derek suggests, his voice low, almost conspiratorial, just to breathe. Before I know it, I'm nodding, my heart pounding as he leads me down the hallway. The closer we get to the bathroom, the more I feel like I'm stepping into something I shouldn't. But the thrill of it calls to me, like a siren's song. We enter the bathroom, the door clicking shut behind us, and the tension thickens. I didn't think I'd end up here with you, I admit, a nervous laugh escaping my lips. Neither did I, he says, his gaze intense. But it feels right, doesn't it? Right? I echo, my mind racing. It feels complicated. Complicated can be exciting, he replies, taking a step closer. I can feel the heat radiating off him, and I'm suddenly hyper-aware of how close we are. Derek, we shouldn't... I start, but the words die in my throat as he reaches out, brushing his fingers against my arm. I know it's wrong, he says softly, his thumb stroking my skin, but I can't help but feel drawn to you. Can you? I stare at him, torn between the desire that flares inside me and the loyalty I know I should feel towards Jake. It's just, I'm married, I whisper, the weight of it hanging heavily in the air. I get it, he says, stepping back slightly, but his eyes are still locked on mine, searching. But does that mean we can't talk? Just be honest about what we want? My heart races as I consider his words. There's a part of me that wants to push him away, to tell him that this is wrong, but another part is aching for this connection. I want to, I admit, my voice barely above a whisper. Let's just talk, he suggests, and I nod, feeling an overwhelming sense of freedom in that moment. We start to share our lives, our dreams, our fears, and the more we talk, the more the world outside fades away. I feel like I've been living in a bubble, I confess, the words tumbling out of me. I love Jake, but sometimes I wonder if I'm missing out on something more thrilling. Derek's eyes light up with understanding. I know what you mean. Life can get so serious, but in moments like this, it feels like we're breaking free from all that. There's a thrill in our conversation, a spark that ignites something deep within me. I feel alive, my heart beating faster as we stand there, lost in each other's gaze. Maybe we should just forget about everything else for a moment, he murmurs, taking a step closer, and I can feel the electricity between us buzzing in the air. It's crazy, reckless even, but the desire to explore this connection is overwhelming. I take a shaky breath, my heart racing as I nod. Okay. As the words leave my lips, I know we're crossing a line, stepping into unknown territory. But in that moment, it feels exhilarating, like the beginning of something that could change everything. As I stood in the grand hall, surrounded by family and friends celebrating my sister's wedding, I felt a knot of nerves tighten in my stomach. I caught a glimpse of my husband, Jake, animatedly chatting with our guests, his laughter ringing out like music. He looked so at ease, while I felt as if I were trapped in a whirlwind of emotions. I needed a moment to breathe. The heat of the day seemed to seep into my skin, making everything feel even more overwhelming. "I just need a quick drink," I muttered to myself, glancing towards the bathroom. It felt like a small escape. As I pushed the door open, I didn't expect to find Derek, my sister's boyfriend, leaning against the sink. He looked up, surprise flashing across his face. "Oh, hey. I didn't think anyone else would come in here," he said, his tone light, but his eyes sparkled with something else. "Just needed a moment," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and electric. He stepped closer, and for a moment, we simply stood there, the noise of the celebration muted behind us. "Want to grab a drink?" he suggested, a playful grin lighting up his features. "Sure, why not?" I found myself saying, a strange excitement brewing inside me. It was just a drink, just a moment away from the wedding chaos. I felt the pull of fate, as if the universe was nudging me towards something unexpected. We moved to the small counter, and as he poured a couple of glasses, our conversation flowed easily. "How are you holding up?" he asked, glancing my way, his eyes searching mine. "I'm fine, just a bit overwhelmed, I guess," I admitted, my heart racing slightly. "It's a big day for my sister." "Yeah, but you look stunning. You should enjoy yourself too," he replied, his gaze lingering on me in a way that made my skin tingle. I laughed, but it felt nervous. "Thanks, I'll try. Just feels like I'm in the background today." "Not possible. You have a presence," Derek said, stepping a bit closer. The space between us seemed to shrink as he raised his glass. "To you, then, for being here and being you." "To me," I echoed, clinking my glass against his. The moment felt charged, and I could feel the heat radiating from him. As we sipped our drinks, I found myself drawn in by his charm. I shouldn't have felt this way, not with Jake outside, laughing and enjoying the party. But there was something in Derek's smile, something that made me forget the world outside. Suddenly, without thinking, I leaned in a little closer. "So, how did you even end up with my sister?" I asked, trying to keep the mood light. But my heart was racing, and I could sense a shift in the atmosphere. "I don't know, really. She's great, but there's something about you that's captivating," he said, his voice low and sincere. My breath hitched. "That's not fair," I said, half laughing, half embarrassed. "I'm supposed to be enjoying her day." "And you are, but there's no harm in appreciating beauty when you see it," he said with a small smirk, his gaze unwavering. Then, it happened. Our eyes locked, and the air crackled with an undeniable chemistry. The laughter outside faded into nothingness, and it was just the two of us in that bathroom, the world falling away. "Is this wrong?" I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. "Maybe," he replied, his voice low and tempting, "but it feels so right." That's when the first kiss happened. It was soft at first, a gentle brush of lips, but it ignited something deep within me. Suddenly, I felt alive, as if I had been asleep for years. My heart raced, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. I pulled back for just a moment, fear creeping in as I heard the distant laughter of guests. "What are we doing?" I asked, my voice shaky. "Something we both want," he replied, his eyes dark with desire. "Just one kiss, and we can go back to the party." But I didn't want it to end. The thrill of it was intoxicating. "Just one more," I breathed, and he didn't hesitate. Our lips met again, more urgently this time, as if we were both drowning in the moment. The warmth of his body against mine felt electric, and I forgot about Jake outside, about everything except the way Derek made me feel. I was alive, exhilarated by this secret, by the thrill of the unknown. "Just a little longer," I murmured, feeling reckless. I knew it was dangerous, but the adrenaline coursed through me. The laughter continued outside, but it felt like a distant memory. It was just us, lost in a whirlwind of passion and desire, and I couldn't bring myself to stop. I was captivated by this moment, even if it meant risking everything I had. I stood in the bathroom, the faint sound of laughter and music from my sister's wedding drifting in from the reception. The air was thick with heat, and I could feel the nervousness bubbling inside me as I caught sight of my husband, Jake, chatting animatedly with guests. His smile was bright, and I could see how much he enjoyed being the center of attention. But as I looked at him, I couldn't shake off the feeling of anxiety that wrapped around me like a heavy cloak. I needed a moment to breathe, to gather my thoughts. "Just a quick drink," I whispered to myself, running my hands over the cool porcelain sink. I turned to the small fridge in the corner, hoping for something strong. As I opened the door, the cold air hit my face, and I felt a little better. I grabbed a small bottle of champagne and poured it into a plastic cup, taking a deep sip. The bubbles danced on my tongue, and I felt the tension start to ease. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and I turned to see Derek, my sister's boyfriend, leaning casually against the doorframe. "I thought I'd find you here," he said, a playful smirk on his face. "Need an escape too?" I couldn't help but smile back at him. "You have no idea, just trying to survive the wedding chaos." He chuckled, stepping further into the small space. "It's a lot, isn't it? Everyone's so happy." He rolled his eyes, but there was something in his gaze that made my heart race. "I think I need a drink as well." I gestured towards the fridge. "Help yourself. I just poured myself a little something to take the edge off." Derek moved closer, reaching past me to grab a bottle. Our arms brushed, and I felt an unexpected spark. "Thanks," he said, his voice low, sending a thrill through me. I could feel the heat radiating between us, an undeniable chemistry that made my heart pound. "How's it going with your family?" I asked, trying to steer the conversation away from the tension that seemed to hang in the air. But as I spoke, I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was brewing beneath the surface. "It's interesting," he replied, a teasing glint in his eyes. "They're nice, but a bit overwhelming. Your sister is the star of the show, and I'm just here trying to keep up." I laughed lightly, feeling a sense of camaraderie with him. Yeah, she does have a way of stealing the spotlight. I took another sip of my drink, trying to calm my racing heart. As we chatted, the conversation shifted, and I could see the way he looked at me, his gaze lingering a moment too long. I felt the tension grow, like a taut string ready to snap. I had to remind myself of Jake, of the vows we had taken. But there was a part of me that was drawn to Derek, wanting to explore this strange connection we had. "Can I ask you something?" Derek said suddenly, his voice lower now. "What do you really think about all of this? The wedding, the expectations?" I hesitated, feeling a flutter of excitement and fear. "Honestly, it feels a bit overwhelming. I love my sister, but sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough with my own life." He nodded, understanding. "I get that. Sometimes I feel like I'm just going through the motions too. Like, what about what we want?" His words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. I could feel my pulse quickening, and I knew I should step back, that this was crossing a line. But instead, I found myself inching closer, drawn into his orbit. "Maybe we should step away for a moment," he suggested, his eyes searching mine. "Just to breathe, away from all this." It felt like a dare, and my heart raced at the thought. "Okay," I whispered, my voice barely audible. I didn't think about Jake or the consequences. All I could think about was the way Derek was looking at me, the way the air crackled with unspoken desire. We slipped out of the bathroom and made our way down the corridor, my heart pounding with each step. The world outside faded, and it was just the two of us, the tension palpable. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. We ended up in a small, dimly lit room, away from the laughter and music. The moment the door closed behind us, the atmosphere shifted. Derek stepped closer, and I could see the intensity in his eyes. "You know this is risky, right?" he said, his voice low and serious. "I know," I replied, my breath hitching. "But it feels different with you." Before I could think, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my skin. The simple touch sent shivers down my spine. My heart raced as I felt a thrill of excitement. I had never imagined this kind of chemistry could exist, especially not in such a moment. But just as quickly, a flicker of doubt crept in. What was I doing? I had a husband waiting for me outside, blissfully unaware, but the thrill of the moment was intoxicating, and I felt myself leaning into it, drawn to Derek like a moth to a flame. "What are we doing?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, a mixture of fear and desire. "Whatever we want," he replied, his eyes darkening with intensity. "Just for now, let's forget everything else." The heat of the moment enveloped us, and for a fleeting second, I considered letting go entirely, diving into the unknown that was Derek and the thrilling danger we had created in that small room. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins, urging me to take the plunge, to let this forbidden connection consume me. The day of my sister's wedding was supposed to be filled with joy and excitement, but as I stood there, I felt a tight knot of nervousness in my stomach. I watched my husband, Jake, chatting animatedly with the guests, his laughter ringing through the air. He looked so at ease, but I felt anything but. I needed a moment to breathe, to collect myself away from the crowd. "Hey, you okay?" Jake glanced my way, concern flickering in his eyes. "Yeah, just a bit warm," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "I think I'll grab a drink." I slipped away, trying to shake off the tension. As I made my way to the bathroom, I thought a quick drink might help. I opened the door and stepped inside, the coolness of the tiles soothing against my warm skin. Just as I was about to splash some water on my face, I heard a voice from behind me. "Mind if I join you for a moment?" It was Derek, my sister's boyfriend. He was leaning casually against the door frame, his dark hair slightly tousled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. Sure," I stammered, surprised to see him here. We hadn't really spoken much before, but there was something about him that drew me in. "Just needed a break from the madness out there," he said, stepping closer. "It's a bit overwhelming, isn't it?" I nodded, feeling a strange connection in the air between us. "Yeah, it is. Weddings can be a lot to take in." He chuckled softly, and as our eyes met, I felt an electric jolt pass between us. "What do you think of my dance moves?" he asked, a playful grin on his face. "I didn't see them," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "But if they're anything like your charm, I bet they're impressive." We both laughed, the tension easing slightly. It was just a casual conversation, but as we stood there, something shifted. The air felt thick, charged with an unspoken energy. I could feel my heart pounding, and doubt crept in. Was this just innocent flirting, or was it something more dangerous? "Do you ever feel like, I don't know, like you're meant to be somewhere else?" he asked, his expression turning serious for a moment. I hesitated, caught off guard. "Sometimes, I guess, but it's just a wedding. I should be here for my sister." "Of course," he replied, but there was a glimmer in his eyes that made me wonder if he felt the same pull. Before I could think too much about it, he reached out, brushing his fingers against my arm. The touch sent a shiver down my spine, and I could hardly breathe. I knew I should step back, remind myself of the vows I had taken, of the man waiting outside, but instead, I found myself leaning in closer. "Derek," I whispered, my voice barely a breath. "Just relax," he said softly, his gaze intense. "I'm not asking for anything crazy. Just a moment. We deserve that, don't we?" His words were like a dare, and I felt the thrill of danger wash over me. I was teetering on the edge of something I had never considered before. "Okay," I finally said, the word slipping out before I could think better of it. His smile widened, and he took my hand, leading me out into the hallway. My heart raced as I followed him, leaving behind the safety of the bathroom. Each step felt like a leap into uncharted territory. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Just a quiet place," he replied, glancing back at me with a look that made my breath catch. "Trust me." We walked through the house, the sounds of the party fading behind us. When he opened the door to a guest room, my heart raced. This was it. I could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on me, but the thrill of what was to come overshadowed it all. As we stepped inside, I felt as if I was entering a world where nothing else mattered. The room was dimly lit, and I could see Derek's eyes sparkling with something I could not name. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "I've never been more sure about anything in my life. Just let go for a moment." And as he leaned in, his lips brushing against mine, I felt a rush of heat that consumed me. I was igniting something deep inside, a desire I never knew existed. In that moment, the world outside faded away, and all that remained was the electric connection between us. I knew I should stop, that I should think of Jake and the life we had built together. But the thrill of this moment was intoxicating. So I surrendered to it, letting the warmth spread through me, as I closed my eyes and kissed him back. In that guest room, away from the laughter and love outside, I discovered a part of myself that had long been hidden away. The thrill of the unknown, the danger of betrayal. It was all too much to resist, and I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. I'm standing in the bathroom, the air thick with anticipation and a hint of lavender from the soap. My sister's wedding is in full swing outside, yet my heart races for an entirely different reason. I glance at my reflection, smoothing down my dress, trying to ignore the familiar flutter of nerves as I catch sight of Jake chatting animatedly with the guests. He looks happy, and I should be too. But there's a heaviness in my chest that I can't shake. "Just a quick drink," I mutter to myself, splashing some cool water on my face. I need to calm my nerves. I turn to leave the bathroom when I bump into Derek, my sister's boyfriend. "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there," I say, surprised yet relieved to see a familiar face. He grins, leaning against the doorframe. "No problem. You look stunning, by the way. How are you holding up?" "Just trying to get through the day without losing my mind." I laugh nervously, my eyes scanning his face. There's something about him that pulls me in, a magnetism that I can't quite place. "Want to grab a quick drink together? I could use one too," he suggests, raising an eyebrow. I hesitate, glancing back at the door leading to the celebration outside. I should probably get back, but maybe just one drink? He steps aside, gesturing for me to go first. "After you." In the cramped space of the bathroom, I feel a strange rush of excitement. There's a thrill in breaking the rules, just a little. As we pour ourselves a drink, the tension in the air shifts. I can feel it between us, a current that's impossible to ignore. "Cheers," he says, clinking his glass against mine. I take a sip, the alcohol warming me from the inside out. So, how do you really feel about everything? He asks, leaning in a little closer. I laugh again, but there's an edge to it. Honestly, I'm a bundle of nerves. I just want everything to go perfectly for her. He nods, his gaze intense. I get that. But what about you? What do you want? I open my mouth to respond, but the words get tangled in my throat. There's something in his eyes that makes my heart pound. I don't know. Our laughter fades, and the silence stretches between us, charged and heavy. I can't help but feel drawn to him, an inexplicable connection that's both thrilling and terrifying. Do you think it's ever okay to want something that's not yours? He asks, his voice low. I blink, taken aback by the question. What do you mean? He leans in, his breath warm against my skin. I mean, sometimes the heart wants what it wants, even if it's wrong. I swallow hard, feeling the weight of his words. As if on cue, a burst of laughter erupts from the party outside, pulling me back to reality. I think of Jake, waiting for me, completely unaware of the storm brewing in this small room. I shouldn't be doing this, I murmur, stepping back. But Derek doesn't move. Isn't it exciting, though? Just for a moment, to forget about everything else? I glance at him, and in that moment, I feel my resolve crumbling. There's an intensity in his gaze that takes my breath away. Maybe just a little longer, I reply, my heart racing. As if sensing my shift, he takes a step closer, brushing his fingers against my arm. The touch sends a jolt through me, igniting something deep inside. I know I shouldn't be feeling this way, yet the thrill of it is intoxicating. I shouldn't be doing this, I whisper again, but the words feel hollow. Just one kiss, he murmurs, his voice smooth like honey. What's the harm in that? I hesitate, my heart pounding in my chest. The thrill of the forbidden calls to me, a siren song I can't resist. Just one, I agree, barely recognizing my own voice. His lips brush against mine, tentative at first, but the moment they touch, it ignites a fire within me. The world outside fades away, and all I can focus on is the heat between us. I feel alive, more than I have in years. See? He breathes, pulling back slightly to look into my eyes. Not so bad, is it? I know I should stop, that I should turn back and rejoin the party, but the moment feels too precious to let go. No, it's not, I admit, my heart racing. The sound of laughter and music filters through the door, but all I can hear is the pounding of my heart and the intoxicating thrill of what we're doing. Just one more, he urges, and I find myself nodding, surrendering to the moment. As our lips meet again, I feel a surge of desire that sweeps me off my feet. I know I should be thinking of Jake, of the vows we made, but all I can think about is the heat of Derek's body against mine, the way he makes me feel alive in ways I had almost forgotten. For a fleeting moment, the guilt fades away, replaced by a heady rush of passion and excitement. I'm lost in this moment, in this man, and I know there's no turning back now. As I stood in the elegant bathroom of the venue, I could hear the muffled sounds of laughter and celebration from the wedding reception just beyond the door. It was my sister's big day, and yet all I could feel was the knot of nerves tightening in my stomach. I looked at myself in the mirror, adjusting my hair, and caught a glimpse of Jake chatting animatedly with our guests. He looked so at ease, so happy, while I felt like a storm was brewing inside me. Just a quick drink to calm the nerves, I whispered to myself, hoping it would help ease the tension. I opened the small cabinet under the sink, searching for something to soothe my racing heart. That's when I heard the door creak open behind me. "Hey, you," Derek said, my sister's boyfriend, stepping inside with a charming grin. "I thought I'd find you here." "Derek, what are you doing?" I asked, surprised and a little flustered. "You're supposed to be with Laura. I needed a break from all the wedding chaos," he replied, leaning against the sink, his presence somehow both comforting and electric. "And I thought you might want one too." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean we're both avoiding the festivities?" "Something like that." He laughed softly. "So, how are you holding up?" "Just trying to get through the day," I admitted, feeling a strange connection with him. "It's a bit overwhelming, to be honest." "Tell me about it," he said, crossing his arms. "But you look beautiful. You should be enjoying the spotlight." "Thanks," I said, blushing slightly. "But I'm more a fan of the shadows right now." Derek chuckled, and as our eyes met, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't expected. The air around us shifted, charged with an unspoken tension. "Maybe we could find a quieter corner to talk, away from all the noise," he suggested, his voice low and inviting. I hesitated, glancing towards the door. "What about Laura?" "She'll be fine for a few minutes," he said, stepping closer. "You deserve a break." Before I could think too much about it, I nodded. "All right, let's go." As we walked down the dimly lit hallway, my heart raced. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, and I was acutely aware of how close he was. We stopped in front of a small restroom, and Derek opened the door, gesturing for me to enter first. I stepped inside, my pulse quickening with every second. "This is nice," he said, leaning against the wall, his eyes locked onto mine. "Just us for a moment." "Yeah," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just us." There was an undeniable chemistry between us, one that felt both thrilling and terrifying. We talked lightly about the wedding, but there was an undercurrent of something deeper. I could see it in his eyes, and I could feel it in the way he leaned closer, the way the air crackled around us. "Do you ever feel like there's something more?" he asked suddenly, his tone shifting. "Like there's a connection that goes beyond just friendship?" I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. "I don't know what you mean." "Come on," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You feel it too. I can see it in your eyes." I was caught off guard by his boldness, but there was a part of me that wanted to explore this feeling. "It's complicated," I finally managed to say. "Life is complicated," he replied, his gaze intense. "But that doesn't mean we can't enjoy the moments that come our way." "Derek," I started, but then he reached out and touched my arm lightly. The simple touch sent a jolt through me, igniting a fire I couldn't ignore. "I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable," he said quickly. "I just want to know if we're on the same page here." I could feel every nerve ending in my body awaken at his touch. "I shouldn't be doing this," I whispered, but my body was already betraying me. "Then don't think about it," he replied, stepping even closer. "Just feel." His words hung in the air, and before I knew it, he leaned in, capturing my lips with his. The kiss was electric, filled with a desperation that took my breath away. I was consumed by the moment, the world outside fading into nothingness. I pulled back, gasping. "What are we doing?" "I don't know," he admitted, his breath warm against my skin. "But it feels so right." The laughter from the reception seemed distant now, a reminder of the reality I was stepping away from. "But Jake, he's outside," I said, the guilt creeping in. "Forget about him for a second," Derek urged, his eyes searching mine. "Focus on us." As we kissed again, the thrill of the forbidden wrapped around us like a shroud. I was lost in the moment, my heart racing with excitement and fear. Finally, I broke the kiss, my mind racing. "This is wrong," I said, panic rising in my chest. "Maybe," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "But it feels so good." Just then, I heard a voice calling out from the hallway. "Hey, where did you two go?" It was Laura, and my heart sank. "We should go back," I said, pulling away reluctantly. "Yeah, we should," Derek agreed, his expression one of mixed emotions. As we made our way back to the party, I felt the weight of what we had done settling heavily on my shoulders. I could see Jake through the crowd, laughing and smiling, completely unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. But as I returned to the festivities, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. Derek's furtive glances across the room ignited the passion we had just shared, and I knew deep down that a part of me was no longer just my sister's sister, or Jake's wife. I was someone else now, tangled in a web of desire and doubt, wondering how on earth I would navigate the chaos that lay ahead. I stood there, feeling like a stranger in my own skin, watching my sister's wedding unfold before me. The sun poured through the ornate windows, casting warm golden light on everything and everyone. Guests laughed, glasses clinked, and my husband, Jake, was in the thick of it, animatedly chatting with our friends. He looked so relaxed, so at home in this atmosphere, while I felt like I was trapped in a bubble of nerves and uncertainty. "Are you okay?" Jake turned to me with a smile, and I forced one back, nodding. "You seem a bit distant." "I'm fine," I replied, though my heart raced for reasons I couldn't quite understand. The truth was, I felt a weight pressing down on me, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside. I needed a moment to breathe. "I think I'll just freshen up," I said, gesturing toward the bathroom. Jake nodded, his attention already back on the guests. As I stepped into the cool confines of the bathroom, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. This was supposed to be a joyful occasion, yet all I felt was a strange tension knotting in my stomach. I peered into the mirror, the reflection of a woman who should be celebrating, yet felt trapped in a whirlwind of confusion. Suddenly, I heard a soft knock at the door. "Hey, is anyone in there?" I opened it a crack, surprised to find Derek, my sister's boyfriend, standing there with a playful grin. "I thought you might need some company," he said, his voice teasing yet warm. "Derek, what are you doing here?" I asked, trying to hide my surprise in a flutter of excitement. "I just wanted to check on you. You looked a bit overwhelmed," he replied, leaning against the doorframe, his casual stance somehow making the atmosphere feel electric. I stepped aside, unsure of why I was inviting him in. "I guess I'm just feeling the pressure. Weddings can be a lot, you know?" Derek chuckled softly, stepping inside. "Tell me about it. But you should be enjoying yourself. It's your sister's big day." As he leaned against the sink, I couldn't help but notice how his presence seemed to shift the air around us. It was as if the bathroom had transformed into a secret world, separate from the wedding chaos outside. "I just need a drink," I said, glancing at the small bottle of hand soap on the sink. "Something to take the edge off." He raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. "Is that all you need? A quick drink? I could help with that." My heart raced at the thought. "A quick drink?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just a little fun to lighten the mood," he suggested, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "What do you say?" Before I knew it, we both shared a laugh, and the tension that had filled the air dissipated, replaced by an undeniable chemistry. It felt exhilarating, like stepping into uncharted territory, and I was drawn to it like a moth to a flame. "Okay, maybe just a quick one," I replied, feeling reckless. "Perfect," he said, stepping closer, the space between us shrinking. I could feel the heat radiating from him, the magnetic pull drawing me in. "So, what do you really think of the wedding? I mean, aside from the stress?" "Honestly, I'm just not sure how I feel about everything," I admitted, my vulnerability surfacing. It's also overwhelming. Derek nodded, his expression softening. I get that. Sometimes it feels like everyone expects you to be a certain way, but it's okay to feel lost. You're not alone in this. His words resonated with me, igniting a spark of connection I hadn't anticipated. As we stood there, talking about our lives and the weight of expectations, I could feel the tension growing between us, thick and palpable. "What about you?" I asked, trying to steer the conversation away from my feelings. "Are you excited about everything changing?" "Excited and terrified," he replied, his eyes locking onto mine. "But I think we both deserve a little excitement, don't you?" That's when our eyes met, and a rush of electricity coursed through me. I felt it deep in my bones, a thrilling mix of fear and desire. Could this really be happening? What if... I hesitated, my heart pounding. What if we just step outside for a moment? Away from all this? Derek's gaze darkened with intention. I'd like that, just for a bit of freedom. We moved closer, the air around us thickening with unspoken words. I felt drawn to him, the pull undeniable. I knew this was wrong. I was married. I was supposed to be committed to Jake. Yet, as Derek leaned closer, I found myself not wanting to resist. "This feels so... different," I whispered, my breath hitching as he brushed his fingers against my arm. "It is different," he murmured, stepping even closer, the warmth radiating from him wrapping around me like a blanket. "And it's okay to feel this way, just for tonight." And in that moment, I felt a wild thrill. The world outside faded, and all that mattered was the heat between us, the undeniable chemistry that sparked with every glance, every touch. I was teetering on the edge of something I knew could change everything. And yet, I could not bring myself to step back. "Just tonight," I echoed, letting the words linger in the air between us. Derek smiled, a glimmer of mischief dancing in his eyes. "Let's make it unforgettable." As we lingered in that charged moment, I knew that whatever happened next would carve a new path in my life, one that was thrilling and terrifying all at once.